Well, as regular watchers of this channel will know, last year I spent a lot of time out in the English Channel during May and June of last year because I wanted to wake everybody up to what was happening. A cross-channel illegal migration situation that I thought would escalate and would become a crisis. It was totally ignored by mainstream media. So I did my best, and actually the more of you that watched it here on YouTube and elsewhere, the bigger the coverage became across the mainstream media. But I only had limited success because here we are now just over a year on, and I've been back in my channel again. Yep, I was out there last week, this time with GB News. Okay, so you can see just over there's a migrant boat coming, absolutely rammed to the gunwales. I don't know how many on that, 20, 30, I would think, something like that. And there is Her Morven, French naval vessel that is escorting this dinghy. I'm very pleased to say I'm doing an evening and a Sunday show with, and isn't it great to have a new TV channel in the United Kingdom? But things have changed from even last year. The boats are getting bigger. The new ones are 11 meters long, that's about 36 feet. They are made for one trip only, put together with glue, plywood on the bottom. They're very, very unsafe. They can take over 70 people. The record so far on one of those boats was 83 people in one of those boats. The types of people coming aren't changing much. Don't be conned by what you see in the newspapers. They'll show you pictures of kids. Yes, there are some kids, there are some women, but it's still 90% young men. And just look at some of these images. You know, these are youngish men arriving on British beaches, and far from being humble or grateful as they come to apply for refugee status, they're almost triumphant. The money that is now being made by the criminal gangs is off the charts. Up to £10,000 to cross in a very secure dinghy with a really good outboard. And on TikTok and elsewhere, you can see Albanian gangs advertising to bring people to Britain illegally and perhaps charging as much as £20,000. At the other end of the scale, I found a boat last week when I was out, 13 Africans in it, no engine, just 2 paddles. But everyone knows as soon as they're across the line, as soon as they're in British waters, they're coming in, they're going to be fed, watered, given medical care, and the chance of them, even when their asylum claim fails being deported, is pretty close to zero. So what's the reaction of all of this been from the Home Secretary? Well, one of the reasons that I've struggled to make people realise the urgency of this, the cost of this, and I think the security threat and risk of all of this, is that I've been up against the Home Secretary. Priti Patel, in speech after speech since August 2019, has reassured the public, her own backbenchers, and large sections of the media that a solution was close at hand. Tough talk. We even saw tabloid headlines. Patel will turn the boats round and send them back to France. Well, nothing like that has happened. And last week she agreed to give another £54 million to the French, having given away £30 million last November. It seems the more money we give to the French, the more illegal migrants they send us. Do they stop a few boats? Yes, they do. But once again, we've witnessed the escorting, literally the escorting of those boats from just off the French beaches all the way across to the British side of the water, where the boats are dumped and they become a problem for Border Force and sadly for the RNLI. And I say that because the lifeboats all along that coast, from Ramsgate right the way round to the inflatable at Rye. On some days, they've all been active, they've all been out. And this is sad, for an organisation that's been around since 1824, that's done such amazing work. Increasingly donors to it saying, well, fine, we support the lifeboats, we love the people that work on the lifeboats, but we don't want it to become an arm of the Border Force. So where do we go from here? Well, I said a few months ago that 20,000 people would cross the English Channel this year illegally. And suddenly the Times had a front page on Saturday saying 22,000 might arrive this year. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to up the ante on this. I think it could be nearer 30,000 that come, especially if we get prolonged, settled weather in months like September, when the sea temperature is pretty much at its warmest. There is not a single thing that Priti Patel has done that will make one little piece of difference. The only way this ends is if the British government says that everybody coming here illegally has come through the safe country of France, and whilst we're more than prepared to consider genuine refugee claims, we will not consider them if people illegally cross the English Channel by small dinghy. Quite happy to process and look at applications that are filed somewhere else. Politically, this is now beginning to matter, and that's where you come in. Priti Patel is now on thin ice. It's a question of cry wolf. People are realising all her tough talk doesn't amount to anything. And Boris's leadership, questions are being asked, particularly over his handling of the pandemic, and the polls over the weekend showed a 5% decline in support for the Conservative Party. I think the cross-channel illegal migrant crisis is going to be the biggest non-COVID story in this country over the course of a summer, and the Conservative government are beginning to feel the heat. They could solve this. They could do something about this. Yes, of course, the lefty lawyers and everybody else would throw their arms up in the air and say it's dreadful. But until we have the resolve to take these illegal boats under tow and take them back to French ports, this crisis won't be solved. So I want you, please, pressure your Member of Parliament. I know last year, when I asked you to do this, generally you got ignored. This year, you won't be ignored. Backbench MPs are beginning to realise this question matters, and it matters in Brexit Britain, because we voted to take back control of our borders, and frankly now, I've never seen our borders so open, so porous, or a British government looking so impotent. So please, join me, help me, put the pressure on them.